Part 29. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 281. Xiaxin Chuan was stunned when he heard this. But Naiyuniu, after hearing this story, turned around and threw herself into Zhang Yuniang's arms. Mom has given birth to 3 children. It's heartbreaking. Does it hurt? Naiyuniu asked in a baby voice. Zhang Yuniang didn't know what they were talking about. When she heard her daughter's question, she was stunned for a moment. She felt a fine pain in her heart, and then she reached out and touched her daughter's wet hair. Mom doesn't feel any pain. Who told me to like children? Zhang Yuniang said softly. Niu still didn't feel relieved when she heard this. Instead, she raised her little face and looked at Zhang Yuniang seriously and said, Mom has worked so hard. She is the most powerful person in the world. Zhang Yuniang chuckled and said, it's just giving birth to a child. How can you become the most powerful person? If you tell others, you will be laughed at. Niu shook her head and said, I feel pain when a needle pricks my hand, let alone Mom who has suffered a piercing pain. I still think Mom is the most powerful. Zhang Yuniang couldn't help but hold her daughter in her arms when she heard this. Don't be afraid, it's okay, Mom has survived. Niu leaned softly in her mother's arms. Old Lady Gu came out at some point. Niu looked up and saw her grandmother. She struggled to throw herself on her grandmother. Niu feels so sorry for Grandma. Grandma has also given birth to children several times. Old Lady Gu didn't know what she was talking about at first. After hearing the little girl's distressed words one after another, she recalled the past of giving birth, the danger and pain of that day, and sighed. My dear, being a woman is not easy. There is nothing we can do about it. As Ms. Gu spoke, her eyes fell on Naiyuniu. Thinking that her well-behaved and sensible granddaughter might have to go through this kind of danger in the future, Ms. Gu couldn't help but feel a little more distressed. Xiaxin Chuan seemed to have finally figured something out and said, since dystocia is so dangerous, no matter how she treats me, it is what I deserve. Gu Mingde shook his head when he heard this. No one could have predicted that childbirth was dangerous. You were just a newborn baby at the time. How could you have predicted so much? It's not your fault. Xiaxin Chuan was surprised and asked, it's neither my fault nor hers. Whose fault is it? Gu Mingde said, this kind of accident is ultimately fate. I told you that childbirth is difficult because I hope you can be more considerate of women's difficulties. But in the final analysis, you didn't want to be born. They chose to give birth to you. This hardship should not be blamed entirely on you. Xiaxin Chuan listened to this and was confused. After a long time, he understood what Gu Mingde meant. I should be considerate of her, but she shouldn't blame me blindly. Is that what you mean? Gu Mingde nodded gently. But Xiaxin Chuan still felt that he was facing an unsolvable situation. But she is already so uncomfortable, what can I do? Gu Mingde patted his shoulder and said, if we are more considerate, we can't live in peace, so we can only stay away from each other, and we can feel at ease. Xiaxin Chuan hesitated for a moment and nodded. Gu Mingde said, it's okay to stay away, but after you leave home, you should also report your safety to your family. Xiaxin Chuan said, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Gu Mingde understood that some children don't like others to point fingers at them all the time, so he didn't continue to nag, but waved his hand to let Naiyuniu come back and listen to his story. After watching for a few times, Ms. Gu and Zhang Yuniang went about their business. The next morning, the Gu family got up early. Zhang Yuniang had to go to a wealthy businessman's house in the city today to meet the rich businessman's wife. Gu Mingde took his daughter and apprentice out and met the carriage of the princess's mansion at the gate of Xianyu Tower. As soon as Shen Ling saw Naiyuniu, she immediately grabbed her hand. It's a pity that I'm not a man, otherwise I would have stayed at your house last night and could have come with you today. Shen Changfeng glanced at his sister and said, "You can't stay here, but you can let Niu stay there." When Shen Ling heard this, her eyes lit up. "Okay. I have a lot of new and interesting things. I'll give them to Niu to play with when the time comes." She said she was playing, but what she was thinking in her heart was that Niu was white and tender, just like the porcelain dolls in the New Year pictures, and she wanted to dress Niu up well. Niu didn't know that she almost became a toy doll of her good sister. She just looked up at Shen Ling and said, "Sister Ling, you look particularly happy today. Is it because you are going to participate in the poetry meeting?" Shen Ling shook her head and said, "Of course I can play with you again." When Niu heard this, she raised her little face and showed a sweet smile. Shen Ling looked at Niu's cute appearance and tried her best to control herself, so she didn't stretch out her hand to pinch the little girl's white and tender face. "Master Gu, don't worry about leaving Niu to me. I will definitely take good care of the baby," Shen Ling said with a smile. Gu Mingden nodded, "I have nothing to worry about leaving the baby to Miss Shen." The host of today's poetry meeting directly booked the entire Xianyu building. At the entrance, there was a special person to lead the way and separate the male and female guests according to the invitation. The group did not go in immediately, but waited at the door for a while, and then waited for Qin Jing and Qin Jingshu. "Listen to your sister Shen, if someone bullies you, don't bear it, remember to tell daddy later, understand?" Gu Mingda couldn't help but remind him when they parted. Niu nodded obediently, then suddenly raised her hand, and Gu Mingda squatted down very cooperatively. Niu patted Gu Mingda's shoulder, "Daddy, you have to have fun today, and you have to tell Niu if you are angry." Gu Mingda didn't expect his daughter to repeat the words to him. He smiled and nodded in cooperation, "Okay, if I am bullied, I will wait for our good boy to take charge of it for me." Such words to coax a child, others couldn't help laughing when they saw it. Only Qin Jingshu looked at the scene and couldn't help but feel envious. It seemed that she and her father would never be so close. Shen Ling led the two little girls and maids into a courtyard with a clean and elegant environment. "A Ling, is this the daughter of this year's Hui Wenlang?" As soon as they entered, someone pointed at Niu and asked. The title of Hui Wenlang is quite loud, and the voice Niu is facing at this time is still relatively friendly. "What a lovely little girl, come here and let me see," the host of the poetry meeting, Princess Yong'an, praised. Princess Yong'an is the eldest princess's cousin, a woman who looks to be in her 30s. She looked at Niu's eyes and eyebrows carefully. She couldn't help but feel a strange feeling in her heart, and glanced at Qin Jingshu beside her. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 282. After a moment, Princess Yongding shook her head gently, thinking that people should be similar. Seeing Princess Yongding remain silent for a long time, Shen Ling could not help but ask, "Aunt, is there anything wrong?" Princess Yongding quickly forced a smile on her face. "What's wrong? This is a rare opportunity for me to see such a beautiful porcelain doll. I heard that this girl is very pleasing to your mother. It's a pity that I was sick when your mother held a flower viewing banquet before, otherwise I would have seen this child a long time ago." Shen Ling nodded and deliberately said, "Niu is well behaved and sensible. Mother loves her so much. She only has Niu in her eyes and almost doesn't see me." Shen Ling said this because she was afraid that she would meet a frivolous person like Princess Rongjia who had no sense of measure and bullied Niu again at the poetry meeting today. Princess Yongding just glanced at Shen Ling when she heard this. She naturally understood her niece's little thoughts. She took off a coral bracelet from her wrist and put it on Niu's wrist without rejection. Niu immediately looked at Shen Ling. Shen Ling smiled and said, "Aunt Yongding likes you, keep it." Niu was at a loss when she got a red coral bracelet. She couldn't help but glance at Qin Jingshu beside her. After all, they came in together and only gave her a gift. Niu was afraid that Qin Jingshu would be disappointed. But Qin Jingshu's expression did not change at all. Instead, she smiled and bowed to Princess Yongding and greeted her. "You are always polite, girl. How is your mother recently?" Princess Yongding asked with a smile. Qin Jingshu still had a measured look. "Thank you, Princess. My mother is doing well recently. She also asked me to say hello to you." Princess Yongding nodded. "Your mother is thoughtful." After a few casual greetings, new guests came. They did not stay with Princess Yongding all the time. The maids pulled them to their seats. Niu and Qin Jingshu sat side by side, and couldn't help but secretly look at her expression. Qin Jingshu not only let Niu look at her, but also asked openly, "Miss Gu, how old are you this year?" "6 years old, how about you?" Niu asked. "I'm 6 years old too. What month were you born on?" Qin Jingshu asked. Niu casually said a date. Her birthday was not a real birthday. She didn't celebrate her birthday in the Zhang family before. When she celebrated her birthday in the Gu family, it was the day when she was born in the Gu family. "Then I'm older than you, can I call you sister?" Qin Jingshu asked softly. Niu had never seen a peer like Qin Jingshu. Obviously they were all 6 years old, but Qin Jingshu was particularly dignified and calm, as if nothing could cause her emotional fluctuations. "You have been secretly looking at me just now, do you have something to ask me?" Qin Jingshu asked proactively. Niu didn't know the rules of these dignitaries. She looked around, lowered her voice, and asked, "Why didn't Princess Yongding give you a gift? I thought it was something that children would give." Qin Jingshu looked at Niu's innocent face, with pure curiosity in her eyes. She didn't get angry because of the question, but explained kindly, "This is not the first time I have met Princess Yongding. Usually, gifts are only given for the first time." Niu suddenly realized and said sincerely, "Thank you for clearing my doubts. I almost made a fool of myself." Qin Jingshu asked, "Do you rarely attend banquets or poetry gatherings?" Niu nodded and said, "I have only attended these 2 times since I came to Beijing." Niu used to attend several big banquets in Qingshui village, but at that time everyone at the table was busy grabbing food to eat, and they were also competing to see who had the loudest voice. This kind of banquet is obviously different from the one in Beijing. Whether it was the flower viewing banquet last time or the poetry meeting this time, the participants were all dressed in gorgeous clothes, their faces were calm, and they always spoke softly. The feeling of relaxation without being chased by life is naturally different from the people in Qingshui village. Niu is only 6 years old and can't explain the feeling, but she can't help thinking that it would be great if the fellow villagers in Qingshui village could also live this kind of life. There are many rules in Beijing. If you can't remember them, it's easy to make people laugh. "If you want to learn, I can teach you," Qin Jingshu said softly. When Niu heard this, the first thing she thought of was not herself, but her father and brothers. If her father participated in the poetry meeting next door and made mistakes, would he also be laughed at? She thought so and couldn't help asking. Qin Jingshu heard this, shook her head, and said, "Men and women are different. Even if a man makes a mistake or breaks the rules, others may laugh at him, but it's only temporary. If he achieves some success in the future, he will still be respected by others. As long as we are girls, we can't make any mistakes." When Qin Jingshu said this, her face was a little sad. Niu was relieved after hearing this and said, "That's good. Then I don't have to worry about my father being laughed at." Qin Jingshu looked at Niu's innocent look and couldn't help but feel envious. Sometimes knowing too little seems to be a kind of luck. Niu suddenly patted her back of the hand and said, "Why can't girls make mistakes? My parents said that as long as you don't do anything harmful, you are still a good child." Qin Jingshu envied Niu for being carefully protected by her parents, but she still patiently told Niuniu the rules her mother taught her at home. Girls from wealthy families in the capital will be watched by countless eyes every time they take a step or move. If they do something wrong or lose their sense of propriety, they will be noticed and remembered by people with ulterior motives. When they meet someone in the future, they may be found out and affect their marriage. After hearing this, Niu frowned. But we are not born for a marriage, Niu said. Qin Jingshu was stunned when she heard this. Niu asked again, it is impossible for people to not make mistakes. It is enough to correct them. It is not a heinous crime. How can someone be unable to turn over for life because of an embarrassment? Qin Jingshu bit her lower lip tightly. Although she was precocious and often acted like an adult, she was actually only 6 years old. Many truths were instilled into her mind by the wife of the Duke of Xian. She didn't even have time to think about it carefully. Or rather, the wife of the Duke of Xian didn't allow her to think about it carefully. My mother has always said that if I make a mistake, I won't be able to find a good husband in the future. Qin Jingshu said. Niuniu looked puzzled and asked with her head tilted, doesn't your mother want you to relax a little? Doesn't she want her daughter to be happy? Qin Jingshu wanted to give Niuniu a positive answer, but she didn't even dare to think deeply about the answer to this question. Niuniu continued, I don't know if all mothers in Beijing are like this, but your mother's requirements are so strict. It doesn't seem like she is raising a daughter, but rather raising someone else's daughter-in-law. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 283. Qin Jingshu was stunned. After a long time, she asked, Sister Gu, your parents should also teach you to read and know etiquette, needlework, and discipline you strictly, right? Niuniu nodded. Qin Jingshu said, they teach you these, don't they hope that you can marry a good family? Niuniu tilted her head slightly and said, of course my mother hopes that I can marry a good family, but she and my father also said that if I can't find a good family, I won't marry. I will stay at home with my parents and brothers. They are willing to take care of me for the rest of my life. Qin Jingshu had never heard such words before, and she felt as if her cognition in the first 6 years of her life had been refreshed. Since you are not going to marry, why do they teach you these? Why do they work hard to urge you to make progress? Qin Jingshu didn't understand. Niu said, my father said that studying is for understanding. If I have a talent for studying, maybe I can make a living with this skill in the future. Although my family is willing to support me, my parents think that it is better to rely on myself than on others. The skills learned are real and can be used at any time. Obviously, the various plans of the Gu family for Niu are all for Niu's future, hoping that she will become a better person. Qin Jingshu could feel the love and cherishment of the Gu family couple for their daughter across the carriage before. Now that she heard Niu talk about the things in the Gu family, her heart was even more bitter. Qin Jingshu can deceive herself that she is the daughter of the Duke's mansion and has a great future in the future. Naturally, she is different from the little girls of ordinary families. But she also knows that the Gu family couple seems to be normal parents. She could also sense that something was wrong in the past, but she never thought about it carefully. Now Niu's words seemed to have torn off the fig leaf that her mother tried hard to cover up. Although her mother always said that the national teacher said she was destined to be a phoenix, Qin Jingshu always thought that her mother still loved her and wanted her to have supreme glory. Now thinking about it carefully, it is true that she wants to have supreme glory, and it is also true that she does not love her. In the final analysis, she is just a tool, just to let her mother enjoy the supreme glory. Qin Jingshu was so sad that she almost cried, but there were people all around her. She had been disciplined into a standard appearance by her mother's strict teaching for many years. How could she dare to cry in front of so many people? If this matter reached her mother's ears, she would not know how to torture herself. Nyuneo suddenly said, "I want to see the rockery over there. Can you go with me?" Qin Jingshu wanted to refuse, but facing Nyuneo's sincere big eyes, she finally nodded. Nyuneo pulled her to the rockery. Shenling, who was still talking to her friends, naturally discovered the movements of the two girls. She did not stop them, but let the maid follow them. The rockery in the yard was not particularly large. After the two girls went in, the maid behind them could also see the backs of the two people inside. Nyuneo whispered to Qin Jingshu, "Cry if you want to. No one can see you here, and no one will find fault with your rules." Qin Jingshu did not expect that Nyuneo pulled her over to comfort herself. She thought to herself that even the friends she had just met could see that she was upset, but her mother would only force her to hold back her tears when she was upset. "You have to laugh. No matter what happens, you can't cry. Only by laughing can you please others. Remember, this is what the lady of Xiongguogang taught her daughter at the time." Qin Jingshu smiled reflexively at this time, but seeing Nyuneo frowning and her eyes full of heartache, Qin Jingshu felt sour in her heart and tears fell silently. "Can you tell me more about your family?" Qin Jingshu said with a sob. Although Qin Jingshu lived in the mansion of Duke Xian, she didn't like staying at home. After all, she was just a 6-year-old girl who longed for her parents' love. Nyuneo didn't talk about it right away. She felt that when others found out that their parents didn't love them, talking about how good their parents were to them seemed like rubbing salt into others' wounds. Maybe your parents are not training daughters-in-law for other families, but they hope that you will have a better future. Just think that I was wrong and don't worry about it, Nyuneo said. But Qin Jingshu shook her head vigorously. "They are training daughters-in-law, you are not wrong." Qin Jingshu knew that the matter of the national teacher privately predicting the fate was of great importance. This was also something that her mother had repeatedly warned her about. Even her father didn't seem to know the inside story. Qin Jingshu naturally couldn't tell Nyuneo about it, but her tears kept falling. Nyuneo didn't understand what Qin Jingshu was thinking. Seeing that she was crying more and more fiercely, she didn't know why she wanted to cry with Qin Jingshu. "You cry slowly, don't be in a hurry." Sister Ling said that no poetry club would force a few-year-old girl to write poetry. "We come to the poetry club to eat delicious food and have fun. No one will keep staring at us," Nyuneo comforted. Qin Jingshu's tears kept falling like beads that had broken off the string, and Nyuneo kept wiping her with a handkerchief. Nyuneo didn't know how to stop someone from crying, but she vaguely felt that it seemed to be a good thing to let Qin Jingshu cry now, so she didn't stop her. Qin Jingshu cried for a long time, as if she wanted to cry out all the grievances hidden in her heart. Nyuneo was beside her, her handkerchief was soaked several times, and she still accompanied her patiently. I lost my temper, I didn't mean to scare you." Qin Jingshu explained stammeringly. Nyuneo held her hand and said, "Isn't it normal for children to cry? You are the eldest lady of the Xiongguo Palace, and you are also a little girl." When Qin Jingshu heard this, she felt as if a heavy burden had been temporarily lifted off her body. But she also knew in her heart that when she returned to Duke Xiongguo's mansion, she would still become the eldest lady who was bound by rules and regulations. Just getting some temporary relief is good. Qin Jingshu was tired of crying and had all her tears. She asked Nyuneo, "Are my eyes red and swollen?" Nyuneo stretched her neck, came over and took a closer look, and then said, "It's only a little red, it should just wait a while." Qin Jingshu didn't want to go out immediately. She also wanted to take off her mask and hide in the rockery for a while. "Does your mother never scold you? Nor hit you?" Qin Jingshu asked. Nyuneo nodded. Qin Jingshu's eyes revealed yearning. "That's great. Niu Niu said, my mother is not always like this. Sometimes she is so angry with my third brother that she wants to hit someone, but as long as we admit our mistake, she won't do it and will only reprimand her a few times. Then it must be easy to stay with her, right? Qin Jingshu asked. Niu Niu nodded again, but then said, my family is different. They just want us to be safe and healthy. Their requirements are not high. Qin Jingshu, however, yearned for such a modest request and asked, does your father hug you often? I feel that he loves you very much. Niu Niu nodded. The envy on Qin Jingshu's face almost solidified. Your father, won't he hug you? Niu Niu asked cautiously. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 284. Niu Niu didn't understand why the eldest lady of the Xiongguo Palace, who was from a high family and was supposed to be pampered, could be so envious of her. Qin Jingshu forced a smile, shook her head, and said, I may have hugged her when I was a child. Now that I'm older, it's inconvenient. Niu Niu frowned and whispered, but we are still children now. When Qin Jingshu heard this, she almost cried again. What Niu Niu cares about most is the love of her family. She looked at Qin Jingshu and felt a little distressed. After hesitating for a moment, she came to the other person's side, stretched out two chubby arms, and hugged Qin Jingshu. Okay, let me hug you, Niu Niu said. Qin Jingshu wanted to say that she didn't want a hug, but she didn't move. She didn't want to give up such a warm embrace at all, and she didn't want to withdraw from it for a long time. What are you two hiding here for? Shen Ling's voice suddenly rang out. Seeing the two little girls staying in the rockery, she couldn't help it and came over to take a look. Qin Jingshu hurriedly separated from Niu Niu. I. Qin Jingshu didn't know how to explain. Niu Niu turned around and didn't explain. Instead, she asked Shen Ling, Sister Ling, do you want me to hug you? Everyone likes my hugs so much. Shen Ling didn't care about Qin Jingshu's strange behavior. He came over with a smile and picked up Niu Niu. Ouch! Darling, you are so heavy, Shen Ling joked with a smile. Niu Niu said calmly, because I have eaten well recently, I am heavy. After Shen Ling put down Niu Niu, he picked up Qin Jingshu who was beside him. Qin Jingshu didn't expect Shen Ling to hug her. She thought Shen Ling had a good relationship with Niu Niu, so she hugged Niu Niu. Jingshu and you are both 6 years old, and she is much lighter than you, Shen Ling said with a smile. Niu Niu was not angry when she heard this, but smiled and winked at Qin Jingshu. Qin Jingshu didn't like her thin appearance, but thinness was regarded as beauty in this dynasty. Whenever she wanted to take a few more bites, a waiter would always jump out to stop her. She knew that these people were her mothers, and her mother was afraid that she would gain weight and not conform to the royal aesthetic. Shen Ling added, have you had enough fun here? There are pastries you like to eat outside. Do you want to fill your stomach first? Niu Niu looked at Qin Jingshu, her face became tense again when she heard that he was going out. Sister Ling, we like to play in the rockery, but I'm a little hungry. I'll go out with you to get some food and I'll be back soon, Niu Niu said. Shen Ling glanced around the rockery in confusion, what's there to do here? Qin Jingshu immediately became nervous after hearing this inquiry, fearing that Niu Niu would spill the beans. But Niu Niu said, this is the secret between me and Sister Qin. Shen Ling reached out and tapped Niu Niu's nose, my dear, don't be the first with me. You actually have a little secret you're hiding from me. Niu Niu came forward and took Shen Ling's hand, Sister Ling and I also have other secrets. I have a lot of secrets, sister, take me to see what delicious food there is. Shen Ling didn't bother to find out more. He took Niu Niu's soft little hand and returned to the poetry meeting. Then he took a plate and took Niu Niu around to pick up pastries as if he were eating at a buffet. A group of noble ladies looked at Niu Niu, who was as cute as a snowball. The little girl's eyes were big and bright, and she kept staring at the pastries on the table. They just felt like some kind of extremely cute little animal. This flour cake. Give her 2 pieces, it's delicious. This. My white jade roll is also delicious. A group of noble ladies all wanted to give the cakes in front of them to Niu Niu. It was the first time that they discovered that feeding children was so interesting. When Niu Niu returned to the rockery, she was holding a plate full of pastries. Eat quickly. My sisters gave it to me. Niu Niu presented a plate of food to Qin Jingshu like a treasure. Qin Jingshu swallowed, but still shook her head and said, "My mother doesn't agree with me eating more." But Niu Niu said, "Eat less in front of your mother. If your mother is not here, she can't control it. It's okay, just eat." After Niu Niu finished speaking, she picked up a piece of pastry and started eating it. "It's so delicious. Who made this? It's better than the white jade rolls I've eaten in the past." Niu Niu wished she could even swallow her fingers. Qin Jingshu glanced at the pastries on the plate and said, "It should be the pastries from Beiwafang. Their pastries are very finely made and taste better than those from the imperial kitchen." Qin Jingshu obviously wanted to educate Niu Niu about science, but after talking a few more words, she drooled more and more. She recalled the wonderful taste of this pastry and couldn't hold it back. She stretched out her hand, ready to pick it up through the handkerchief. "Peace." Niu Niu frowned and looked at her. "Your handkerchief is full of tears. Don't you feel salty when you eat the cakes?" Qin Jingshu. But if Qin Jingshu, like Niu Niu, directly takes the cakes with her hands, she can't overcome the hurdle in her heart. Niu Niu took her handkerchief away, looked at Qin Jingshu's bewildered face, and said, "Take it with your hands." Qin Jingshu shook her head with a troubled face. "Girls are not allowed to eat with their hands." Niu Niu was confused. "What about eating fruits? Don't you eat fruits with your hands? Without holding them?" Qin Jingshu said in a matter-of-fact tone, "Someone cuts the fruit and eats it with a fork. Besides, I can't eat too much fruit." Niu Niu's eyes widened in disbelief. Qin Jingshu said with an embarrassed look, "I am too much trouble, but my family has always taught me this way." Niu Niu rolled her eyes and said, "Young ladies cannot eat with their hands, but we are in the rockery now, it's different. You are now Sister Qin, not Miss Qin, you can eat with your hands." Qin Jingshu's eyes lit up when she heard this. People who have been suppressed for a long time have the opportunity to resist, even if it is very small, and they can't help but tremble with excitement at this time. "It's just a piece of cake, don't be nervous," Niu Niu reminded. Qin Jingshu forced herself to calm down. At this time, she was still thinking about what her mother taught her, that she should be as calm as Mount Tai when facing major events. Qin Jingshu suddenly didn't want to calm down. She reached out to grab the cake and stuffed it into her mouth. "Delicious. Really delicious." Qin Jingshu couldn't help laughing while eating. She laughed and suddenly shuddered. "Don't talk while eating or sleeping. Who told you to smile so shallowly? Even if you smile, the corners of your mouth should not be too wide. A shallow smile is best." The words of Lady Xianguo echoed in Qin Jingshu's ears. Qin Jingshu lowered her head, swallowed the cake after a moment, and showed an extremely exaggerated smile to Niu Niu as if on purpose. "Niu Niu, can I have another piece?" Qin Jingshu was used to asking. Niu Niu frowned and said, "Sister Qin, I brought it here to share with you. Of course, you can eat whatever you want. You, eat if you want, don't fake smile at me." After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 285. Qin Jingshu's body stiffened. Niu Niu patted her shoulder and said, "Sister Qin, laugh if you want to, don't laugh if you don't want to, don't embarrass yourself." Qin Jingshu just wanted to smile exaggeratedly. When she heard this, she restrained her smile. She told herself in her heart that she was rebelling against her mother by not smiling. Qin Jingshu seemed to be venting her anger and ate several pieces of pastry in one go. After careful calculation, she ate more than Niu Niu. Niu Niu ate in small bites and did not stop her. When Qin Jingshu was devouring it, she reminded her to slow down and not choke. I haven't eaten so happily for a long time, and my family won't let me eat more, Qin Jingshu said. Niu Niu asked, when I visited a wealthy family, I saw cakes placed on the table all year round. Your mother didn't let you eat them, so who ate these cakes? Qin Jingshu shook her head and said, what the rest of the family eats, what the servants eat, but I can't eat. My mother is afraid that I will get fat if I eat too much. Can't we eat more serious meals? Niu Niu couldn't help but ask. Qin Jingshu nodded sadly, I get fat easily. My mother said I don't look good if I get fat. Niu Niu asked again, then you usually don't have enough to eat? Qin Jingshu nodded and said, actually, it's good to get used to it, as your appetite becomes smaller, you won't feel hungry so often. Niu Niu looked at her distressedly. In Niu Niu's view, family is the most important thing, followed by filling her stomach. She feels that Qin Jingshu is really pitiful. Her family treats her badly, and she can't even eat happily. It's like being in jail in the Xiongguo Palace. Qin Jingshu asked, isn't your mother afraid that you will gain weight? Niu Niu shook her head, my mother said that it is best for little girls to be chubby. This is called blessing. Qin Jingshu was very envious after hearing this. Being slim is something you should only consider when you grow up. Most children of this age are greedy at heart. Then you go out and eat more when you are not in front of your mother, Niu Niu suggested. Qin Jingshu was overjoyed when she heard this, but after a moment she said, it won't work. People sent by my mother have been watching me and will remind me. As soon as she finished speaking, Qin Jingshu's maid's voice came from outside the rockery, Miss, it's time for you to come out. You have been in there for a long time and you have to talk to other ladies. You can't always talk to one person. Qin Jingshu's maid wanted to remind her a long time ago, but Shen Ling's maid kept stopping her. For such a long time, she couldn't stop her. I'm going out. Qin Jingshu glanced at the plate of pastries in Niu Niu's hand reluctantly, and then at the fake cave. Niu Niu said in confusion, aren't all maids listening to the young lady? Why do I want you to listen to her? As a maid, if I do something wrong, she will file a complaint with my mother, Qin Jingshu said helplessly. Then is she your maid or your mother's maid? Niu Niu asked. Qin Jingshu couldn't answer for a moment. She had never realized that her life was so suffocating. Do all the maids in your family obey you? Qin Jingshu asked. Of course my maidservant must listen to me, but I only have one maidservant. She is 2 years older than me, and I don't often ask her to serve, Niu Niu explained. Niu Niu secretly regards the crazy girl as her sister, so her maid is only Chietu, the daughter of MRSG. Chietu is only 8 years old. She is not like a maid serving Niu Niu, but more like a playmate. Maybe she is doing it for your own good. Niu Niu whispered. Qin Jingshu said without hesitation, she is not doing it for my own good. She is doing it for the family, for me to marry well in the future and to be a glorious family member. Niu Niu frowned slightly, feeling that the person Qin Jingshu was talking about was not referring to the maid outside, but to someone else. Niu Niu said carefully, Guanzhao Menlin, brother Qin Jing is about to pass the Jinshi examination. He has already Guanzhao Menlin, and so do you. Can you relax? Qin Jingshu slowly shook her head, her face uncertain. The maid outside the rockery was still urging him one after another. Niu Niu took her purse and put some cakes for her and said, she keeps urging you to eat it secretly. Qin Jingshu understood Niu Niu's kindness, but she didn't want to accept it. Would she have to be stared at by the maid all the time? Listening to the maid's voice one after another, she just felt that she was lower than the maid. She should be her own master instead of letting a girl ride on her neck. Qin Jingshu stood up and walked out of the rockery, and saw Shen Ling's maid stopping her own. Masters are playing in there, why do you have to keep disappointing them? Shen Ling's maid had a look of incomprehension on her face. But the maid Qin Jingshu brought was very insistent. Qin Jingshu said politely to Shen Ling's maid, "Sister, my maid, and I have something to say, please excuse me." Shen Ling's maid immediately nodded and took a few steps away. When no one else was around, Qin Jingshu's maid immediately whispered, "Miss, you are too indulgent today. If madam knows." But Qin Jingshu said, "Presumptuous." The maid was stunned when she heard this. Qin Jingshu stared at her and said, "It's not your turn to talk about my matters." The maid took a deep breath. "Madam sent me to keep an eye on the young lady. I want you to be careful in your words and deeds, and not to do anything that would disgrace the reputation of the Duke's family. Madam is your mother, and she will not harm you." Qin Jingshu felt so upset when she heard this that she was about to cry. It was this kind of words again, as if she would do something immoral if no one was watching her. She was only 6 years old, what kind of shame could she do? And the maid in front of her, who kept saying that she was the lady, was actually just enjoying the pleasure of bullying her master as a subordinate. "Shut up," Qin Jingshu scolded with a gloomy face. The maid felt that Qin Jingshu had changed today and was not as obedient as before. She looked past Qin Jingshu and looked at the rockery inside, just in time to meet Naiyuniu's eyes. "Miss, did someone say something to you? If the lady knew that you listened to those people outside." Qin Jingshu said, "I told you to shut up, don't you understand?" The maid was forced to shut up. Qin Jingshu continued, "Miss Gu is my friend, you are not allowed to say bad things about her." Although the maid didn't say anything, her eyes were undisciplined. Qin Jingshu was smart, and now she was awakened by Naiyuniu's words. If the people around her don't listen to her, she will continue to be in bitter water in the future. What's the point of such a life when people are watching her everything? Go to Beiwafang and buy a portion of various cakes. I want to give them to my friends. Qin Jingshu casually found something to send the maid away. The maid looked unhappy and said, "Miss, Beiwafang is far away. If I go to buy cakes, who will serve you? You only took me out today." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 286. Qin Jingshu frowned, "My words are useless to you. I can't afford a maid like you." When the maid heard this, she could only bow her head and agree, no matter how reluctant she was. After sending the people away, Qin Jingshu finally showed a relieved look on her face. She turned around and went back into the rockery, and said to Naiyuniu happily, "I sent the people away. Let's continue playing here." Qin Jingshu felt that she had fallen in love with the rockery. The space inside the rockery was very small, and no one was watching her every word and action. She felt like she was alive again. Naiyuniu saw that her friends were happy, and her face also showed joy. She asked, "What do you want to play? Let's play go bang? Flipping rope? Clapping? Catch stones?" Qin Jingshu was confused when she heard this. Are these all games? I haven't heard of them. Naiyuniu nodded and asked, "Is there no one to play these with you?" Qin Jingshu's face suddenly showed embarrassment. She felt that compared with Naiyuniu, she seemed like a bumpkin. Naiyuniu patted her shoulder and said, "It's okay, I'll teach you. I'm good at teaching. You're so smart, I guarantee you'll learn it right away." A 6-year-old girl, no matter how precocious she is, who doesn't like to play? Qin Jingshu looked at Nayunia with sparkling eyes when she heard this. When Shenling came over for the second time, she saw two little girls hiding in the rockery playing the game of catching stones, having a lot of fun. Well, I'm scratching my head outside thinking about how to write a poem, but you guys are having fun inside, Shenling said with a smile. When Qin Jingshu heard this, she wanted to apologize at the first time. But Nayunia still looked calm and asked, Sister Ling, is the meal ready? Shenling nodded and said, yes, I'll pick you up for dinner. Nayunia was about to run out when she heard this, but was stopped by Shenling. Your hair is messy, Shenling complained while reaching out to smooth Nayunia's hair. She pulled Qin Jingshu over and helped to tidy up. You can go out now. Shenling finished speaking and asked, Jingshu, where did the girl you took go? I didn't see her outside just now. Qin Jingshu said, I sent her out to buy something. She will be back soon. It was just a girl. Shenling asked and then ignored her. He led the two girls to the table. When they arrived at the table, Shenling arranged for the two to sit next to him. He asked belatedly, can you two pick up food by yourselves? Nayunia looked up and said, Sister Ling, you look down on me. I can even wash clothes, so how can I not pick up food? Shenling smiled and said, yes, 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 how could I forget that my brother was taught to wash clothes by Nayunia? Nayunia is really amazing. Shenling looked at Qin Jingshu. Qin Jingshu also nodded and said, don't worry, Sister Shen, I will. When the dishes were served, Shenling saw Miss Zhao sitting opposite her. She didn't eat a single bite of the food, but was busy picking food for her naughty sister. But the naughty sister wanted this and that, which made Miss Zhao's forehead blue. If you do this again, I won't take you out next time there is a poetry meeting, Miss Zhao threatened her sister in a low voice. But the little brat ignored her threats and continued to point east and west with confidence. When Shenling lowered her head, she saw that the two little ones beside her were eating obediently, and she couldn't help thinking that she was better at taking care of children. This meat is especially delicious, it melts in your mouth, and it is made by a specially invited master chef. Nayunia pointed to the braised pork on the table and said to Qin Jingshu. As if to take special care of the girls at this table, the braised pork was cut into smaller pieces than usual, but even so, few of the ladies wanted to touch this dish. After all, there were so many eyes watching. Even if the ladies said what they liked to eat, they would say it was expensive and light. No one would talk about braised pork all day long. At this time, Qin Jingshu hesitated whether to reach out for her chopsticks. Nayunia, however, did not have so many concerns. She not only picked up some for herself, but also used the public chopsticks to pick up a piece for Shenling and Qin Jingshu. You must try it, it's really delicious. Shenling had actually tasted it, but she was too proud to do it, so she acted reluctantly and said, I don't like to eat oily things, but since you insist on me, I have to eat it. The other ladies at the table retracted their gazes after hearing this. Shenling not only ate the braised pork, but she also got closer to Nayunia and whispered, my dear, I want to pour the soup over the rice. The soup of braised pork mixed with rice is the best. Nayunia showed an expression of I can't do anything with you on her face, but she still helped her scoop a large spoonful of meat and soup helplessly. Shenling still had that disgusted expression on her face, and said, my dear, I have my own hands, why do I need you to pick up food for me? Are you so worried that I won't be full? Nayunia curled her lips helplessly, and scooped a spoonful of soup for Qin Jingshu and herself. Qin Jingshu had never tried this way of eating before. Now the rice was dyed into an attractive color by the braised pork soup, which made her appetite whet. She took a bite. It's delicious. Qin Jingshu felt like she had eaten happiness. The delicious and wonderful taste made her extremely satisfied. Nayunia said proudly, it's delicious, right? I eat this way every time I come here. The master chef who makes braised pork only makes this dish. She was originally a peasant woman in the suburbs of Beijing. Uncle Luo heard about her ability to cook meat and begged her to come to the restaurant to be the chef. Qin Jingshu also has a chef at home, but when it comes to this dish alone, she has to admit that no one can compare to this peasant woman. The other noble ladies originally just looked at Shen Ling, who was eating meat, for a few more times, but as Niu Niu started to eat, the noble ladies couldn't help but keep their eyes on Niu Niu. Niu Niu's eating power is too contagious. Ah! A full spoonful of soup and rice was stuffed into the little girl's mouth, full. The little girl's cheeks were chubby, and her eyes narrowed after eating. The feeling of happiness and satisfaction could not be deceived. The more the other noble ladies at the table looked, the more saliva they swallowed quietly. They couldn't help but wonder, is that plate of greasy braised pork really delicious? Although it is one of the signature dishes of Xianyu Tower, it is pork after all. Ordinary people may not eat pork once a month, but in the eyes of dignitaries, it is low-grade meat and far less decent than mutton. Niu Niu took another mouthful of soup and rice. The other ladies at the table seemed to have smelled the delicious aroma of Niu Niu's rice. How about trying a piece, they thought to themselves. I don't know who stretched out the first pair of chopsticks, but once they started, they couldn't stop. A low cough came from behind the ladies. It was the servants they brought with them, reminding them not to eat too much of this greasy dish. But because everyone around them was breaking the rules, everyone pretended not to hear the voice behind them. After tasting such a delicious dish, even Miss Zhao looked satisfied. Her unruly sister was eating the rice with soup beside her at this time, and she had no time to bother her sister. They ate one chopstick after another, and when they couldn't help eating too much, the plate of braised pork was also cleaned up. Although no one of the ladies spoke, when they looked at each other, they all had only one thought: delicious. It's really delicious. No wonder it's one of the signature dishes of Xianyu Tower. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 287. Qin Jingshu turned her head sideways and whispered, Niu Niu, you are so good at eating. They all learn from you. Niu Niu raised her neck proudly and said, of course, my family used to have a braised food shop, and I helped adults sell goods. Every time I helped, my braised food sold out very quickly. When Qin Jingshu heard this, her eyes were filled with admiration. When she was tortured by her mother to the point of death, Niu Niu, who was her own age, was able to help the family a lot. Niu Niu, was the braised food at your home also very delicious? Qin Jingshu asked. Niu Niu felt less sleepy when she mentioned this and said, do you know the Fu Wang braised meat shop in Beijing? They use my recipe. Niu Niu pointed to another empty plate on the table and said, that braised dish has the same taste. The braised food on the table is a cold dish, all cut into small pieces, and the plates are exquisitely stacked in one place. There is almost only one mouthful for each person. It is a complimentary dish, so the plate is quickly empty. Unlike other tables where people call for extra dishes when the dishes are empty, this table is full of unmarried girls. Even if the food is empty, they are embarrassed to ask for extra dishes. Moreover, if they don't really like to eat, they usually won't eat an empty plate, at least some will be left, so as to show that they have a small appetite. Now that the braised pork has begun, the dishes on this table have completely caught the attention of the ladies. Their appetites have been opened up, and they have gradually tasted the goodness of other dishes. I finally understand why the princess decided to hold the poetry club here. It turned out that she liked the cook here, a noble girl aged 14 or 15 said to Shen Ling. Shen Ling smiled softly and said, speaking of which, I have eaten in the palace many times, but the dishes here are not worse than those in the palace. Shen Ling said it politely. In fact, she secretly felt that many of the dishes were much better than those in the palace, but she couldn't say this openly. By the time the table was over, most of the dishes were empty. The ladies on the table looked around. In this situation, there was no need to worry about who was acting as the eyes and mouth, and it would spread a bad reputation. After all, the whole table was an accomplice. When they looked at each other, they felt very close to each other, and the distance between them was completely shortened in just one meal. Next time I hold a poetry meeting, I will hold it here. You will all come then. Miss Zhao took Shenling and said. Shenling couldn't help laughing. Miss Zhao's family turned to look at Niu Niu and said, "Baby, I'm coming too. With you here, the food will be more delicious." Niu Niu was stunned when she heard this. She actually didn't know the sister, but she still nodded obediently. "Okay, thank you, sister." Miss Zhao saw that Niu Niu was as cute as a porcelain doll, and couldn't help but reach out and touch her fair little face. "You're so good." Miss Zhao originally thought that the little girl's face looked like her sister, but now that she was touching Niu Niu's tender little face, she just couldn't put it down. She couldn't help but look back at the devil in the family, secretly thinking that she really wanted to compare the goods, and her sister. "Even if you are just a skinned monkey, your face is still not smooth. Rougher than even an adult like her. Hee hee, my dear baby's face is better to touch." But when she turned around, Shenling took her hand away with a dark face. "Don't touch children's faces," Shenling said unhappily. Shenling was very angry. She didn't even touch Niu Niu's face a few times, but Miss Zhao took a big advantage. Miss Zhao retracted her hand without knowing what she wanted to say. "Next time I invite you to my house, we will play together," Qin Jingshu whispered to Niu Niu. The two played together for most of the day, and Qin Jingshu already regarded Niu Niu as a good friend. Niu Niu didn't refuse and just asked, "Will your mother let me be a guest at your home?" When Qin Jingshu heard this, she immediately lowered her head in despair. She was really not sure of convincing her mother. Mrs. Xiangguo always had a higher level of attention. Whichever girl her daughter talked to a few words from, she would carefully inquire about the background of the girl to see if any of her father or brothers were officials in the court and how big the officials were. Niu Niu saw her like this and said, "It's okay, I can't go to your house, but you can come to my house. Let me tell you, there is a sister in my family who makes delicious snacks. She is very good." Qin Jingshu was moved. She didn't expect that her good friend, whom she had just met, would take such good care of her. She nodded vigorously, "Thank you, Niu Niu." The maid sent out by Qin Jingshu ran around the city without even having lunch, and finally came back with large and small bags. "These pastries are all for you. They are my first gift to you," Qin Jingshu said seriously to Niu Niu. Niu Niu waved her hand and said, "There are too many, just give me a pack." Qin Jingshu shook her head and said, "I want to give it to you. Anyway, if I take it back, my family won't let me eat it. Just accept it and don't refuse." Niu Niu looked troubled. But Qin Jingshu said again, "My dear, just think it's me begging you, okay? Niu Niu." It was the first time that Niu Niu was begged to accept a gift. "Then I will bring you a lot of delicious food next time," Niu Niu could only say. Seeing her accept it, Qin Jingshu's face relaxed visibly. "Miss, it's getting late. We should go back home. The prince is already waiting outside." The maid, who had been running around for most of the day and was now hungry, said with a dark face. Qin Jingshu glanced at her, then took Niu Niu's hand and said, "Goodbye, baby, don't forget me. You can also post your post to my elder brother. I beg my elder brother to take me out." Niu Niu felt that Qin Jingshu was not going home, but was going to a den of wolves. "Okay, I'll remember everything, don't worry," Niu Niu assured again and again. The two girls walked hand in hand to the door of Xianyu Tower, and Qin Jing was also saying goodbye to Gu Mingda. "Thank you, Uncle Gu. If it weren't for your help, I don't know how much more wine I would have been forced to drink." Qin Jing bowed his hands in thanks. Perhaps because they met several times during the exam, Gu Mingde always felt that Qin Jing was his own junior. He smiled and waved his hand, saying, "You kid, why are you being polite to me? I'm just being arrogant and saying that I look at you like my own child." When Qin Jing heard this, the corners of his mouth rose. "I look at Uncle Gu, and I feel like he is my own elder. I always want to get close to him." His smile was like thousands of flowers blooming in spring, making people dazzled. Many noble ladies who had just left Xianyu Tower couldn't help but look at him several more times. Gu Huiwen and brother Qin are both talented. Their works are handed down from generation to generation. I admire them, someone suddenly praised them. The ladies in front of the restaurant were stunned when they heard the voice. Qin Jing was as beautiful as a jade tree. Gu Mingde was a little older, but also tall and handsome. Shen Changfeng, who was beside Gu Mingde, was a man, but he had beautiful eyebrows and eyes, and his beauty was not inferior to that of a woman. Lu Saiqian, who was speaking, rarely appeared in front of people. When he showed up, he was also eye-catching. Four handsome men stood together, like a painting. Not to mention the ladies, many young men and wives on the street were staring at them for a long time without moving their feet. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 288. Qin Jing is already married. Gu Mingde has reached middle age again. Shen Changfeng is a well-known playboy. Although these three people had extraordinary faces, the unmarried ladies ultimately focused most of their attention on Lu Saiqian. Lu Saiqian is the grandnephew of Princess Ji from her natal family, the second son of Yongchang Haofu, and is now also at Baiyun Academy. Those who can stay in Baiyun Academy are all learned people. In addition, he was now standing with Gu Mingde, a new academician, and Qin Jing, a prospective jinshi, which actually gave the ladies the illusion that Lu Saiqian's knowledge was on par with the first two. It was as if Lu Saiqian would be able to go ashore in the next round of imperial examinations. Under such circumstances, many noble ladies secretly took note of Lu Saiqian's appearance and included him in their consideration list. When Shen Ling saw Lu Saiqian, her face immediately darkened, and that nauseating feeling came over her again. Niu took Shen Ling's hand and asked, "Sister Ling, do you feel uncomfortable again?" Shen Ling forced a smile on her face and shook her head. The farewell over there came to an end, and several men turned back to look at their female relatives. Niu was not constrained by the demands of those noble girls. After looking at each other, she immediately let go of her companion's hands and threw herself into Gu Mingde's arms like a baby swallow in the forest. Gu Mingde also happily picked up his daughter. "Have you eaten enough today?" Niu touched her belly and couldn't help but burped. "The banquet noodles are delicious, and the pastries are also delicious." "I ate a lot." Gu Mingde couldn't help laughing. The young men and women participating in the poetry meeting on the side felt envious when they saw the close relationship between Gu Mingde and his daughter. I don't know when the trend of caring for grandchildren but not for children emerged in the capital. What followed was that fathers and sons and fathers and daughters, although they were blood relatives, were not close to each other. The son can often receive instruction from his father, but the daughter may not see her father once for 10 days and a half. Gu Mingde thanked Shen Ling again for taking good care of Niu. "Master Gu, you're welcome. I really have never seen a better child to take care of than Niu," Shen Ling said. Shen Changfeng also said from the side, "Taking care of Qiabao is what she should do." "Master, you don't need to thank her." As an elder brother, Shen Changfeng is not wrong to say such things. But Lu Saiqian on the side suddenly said, "Taking care of children sounds easy, but in fact it is quite complicated. People who are not careful will not be able to do it." Brother Shen said this, but it erases Miss Shen's contribution. Lu Saiqian turned to Shen Ling and smiled tenderly. At this time, the noble ladies on the side, after hearing these words, felt even more fond of Lu Saiqian. Not only was he handsome, he was also gentle and considerate, and knew how difficult it is to be considerate of others. Shen Ling knew about Lu Saiqian's affair with his wife, but she just felt bored when she heard such intimate words. "Brother, teach my sister, I'll just accept it, I don't need you to worry about it," Shen Ling replied with a cold face. Lu Saiqian didn't expect Shen Ling to have such a temper. There was only a moment of astonishment on his face, and soon he turned into the gentle gentleman again. He bowed his hands and said, "Miss Shen, please forgive me, it's me who's causing trouble." When Lu Saiqian made such a fuss, the ladies who were watching couldn't help but look at Shen Ling with reproachful eyes. Shen Ling didn't bother to care about what others said. She was tired of looking at Lu Saiqian even more. After cursing sanctimonious in her heart, she got into her carriage. Lu Saiqian's eyes darkened. Shen Changfeng didn't have a good look towards Lu Saiqian, but he still remembered his master's teachings and could not express his emotions or anger, so he suppressed his disgust and said to Gu Mingde, "Master, my sister seems to be tired, I will send her back first." Niuniu, on the other hand, asked in a low voice, "Don't you want to thank brother?" Shen Changfeng was stunned for a moment, then leaned into Niuniu's ear and whispered, "Your sister Ling is not very happy. I will send her back before coming back." Gu Mingde said, "Shopkeeper Luo and I still have something to talk about, please take your time." Gu Mingde nodded towards Qingjing and Lu Saiqian, then turned around and entered the Xianyu Tower with his daughter in his arms. Qingjing also said goodbye. In an instant, the area around Lu Saiqian was empty. He had been watching a few of them talk for a while, but now they all disappeared as Lu Saiqian joined. It was inevitable that people would have the illusion that Lu Saiqian was unpopular. The young men snickered at Lu Saiqian's embarrassment, but the young ladies looked at Lu Saiqian distressedly several times. When they returned to Xianyu Tower, Gu Mingde didn't ask for shopkeeper Luo. Instead, he randomly asked for a private room and waited there for Xiaxing Chuan to pick them up. He asked his daughter in a low voice, "You all don't seem to like Lu Gong. Your Shen brothers and sisters just barely have the word hate carved on their foreheads. Why is that?" After hearing Niuniu talk about what happened before, Gu Mingde couldn't help but sigh. At the poetry meeting earlier, this boy from the Lu family seemed to be talented and his poems were good, but he didn't expect that he would do such a thing in private, which is a pity. Niuniu said, "Dad, what you said is a bit strange. What a pity for you. Is it because you think he is good looking that you can learn well?" Gu Mingde nodded and said, "My face is like a crown jewel, but it's a pity that I do such a shady thing." Niu was young and always had strange ideas. She said, "If you look good, you can't do bad things. Isn't it a pity for ugly people to do bad things?" Gu Mingde was stunned for a moment, and after a moment, he touched his precious daughter's little head and said, "Bao Bao is right, I am narrow-minded. Anyone who does bad things is something to be regretted, but I judge people by their appearance." On the Shen family's carriage, Shen Ling was still sulking. Shen Changfeng coaxed, okay, you won't marry him anyway, why are you unhappy because of his few words? Don't make yourself angry." Although Shen Ling knew this, he still said, "He clearly set up an outer room outside and deliberately came in front of me to show off. This is because he is judging me for being as shallow as everyone else. Because he can be tempted by just saying a few words. Isn't he going to marry?" Shen Changfeng's head was full of questions. The man was careless and asked in a low voice, "Aling, are you thinking too much? He only said a few words to you. Does he have so many plans?" Shen Ling glared at her brother and said, "You have such a beautiful face in vain. If you were like him, would you worry about finding a wife?" Shen Changfeng was scolded unpreparedly and coaxed, okay, let's not talk about this person. Since you don't like him, then look at others. You are only 14 years old now. You can always find him a good one. When Shen Changfeng said this, he suddenly frowned and said, I remember someone who seemed to be 14 years old. Shen Ling was so frightened that she interrupted on the spot and said, the people you remember are just the bad friends from the past. I don't want to marry a playboy. Shen Changfeng said in a good temper, okay, then I don't want to, and I'm not in a hurry to get married. At worst, I will support you for the rest of my life. Shen Ling couldn't help laughing, if I really rely on my brother to support me, I'm afraid I'll have to drink the northwest wind. Compared with the harmony between the Shen brothers and sisters, the carriage in the Duke Xian's mansion is now a bit gloomy. Qin Jingshu got on her brother's carriage first, and now there were only 2 siblings in the carriage. Brother, can you do me a favor? Qin Jingshu asked cautiously. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 289. In Duke Xiangguo's mansion, after listening to the maid's report about what her daughter did at the poetry meeting, Mrs. Xiangguo's brows were so frowned that they could kill a fly. I don't know whether to advance or retreat. Mrs. Xiangguo casually threw a round fan on Qin Jingshu. Qin Jingshu knelt on the ground and did not hide at all. The round fan was light and fluttery, but the handle was extremely hard. It hit Qin Jingshu directly on the shoulder. Qin Jingshu was only 6 years old. She was hit so hard that she staggered and couldn't help but make a muffled sound. What are you pretending to be? I didn't hit you in the face, Mrs. Xiangguo said viciously. Tears welled up in Qin Jingshu's eyes as she listened to her mother's barking like a dog. At this time, even the servants in the room were standing, but she was the only one kneeling. Qin Jingshu couldn't understand. Her mother always said that her status was noble, her future was precious, and she should be careful about her words and deeds outside. So why did she always humiliate her like this? Mrs. Xiangguo watched the future queen kneel down with enjoyment, then waved back and said, are you thinking why I do this to you? Qin Jingshu raised her head when she heard this and looked at Mrs. Xiangguo. Mrs. Xiangguo said lightly, those who have achieved great things throughout the ages have been able to endure hardships that ordinary people cannot bear. How much hardship have you endured now? Every day, you are well dressed and well fed, just to let you play less and do more useful things. Look at you, you can't even bear this, how can you become more than 10,000 people in the future? When Qin Jingshu heard this, her face was full of tangles. But in the final analysis, she was only 6 years old, and she was the eldest daughter of the noble Xiangguo palace. She had not seen any real benefits of being a queen. Concubine Li in the palace is your aunt's sister. If the palace had not chosen her to become a maid that year, she won His Majesty's favor and became a concubine and took charge of the palace. She is already able to support her mother's clan even before she has the honor of being a mother in the world. Her younger sister married into our prince's family, and her younger brother has a successful official career and has now reached the 3rd rank. Who is her brother? He is an incompetent man who relies on his sister to support him. Now he is worthy of serving as an official in the same court as your grandfather. What is her original identity? The daughter of an ordinary member of the Guanglin mansion. Even if they come to the door of our duke's mansion, who would be willing to pay attention to them? There are countless noble ladies in the palace. It is not good for His Majesty to fall in love with anyone, but he has to fall in love with someone like this. Personally, the concubines in the harem who come from rich families are overpowered by her. When Mrs. Xiangguo mentioned this, her eyes turned red with hatred, as if concubine Li in the palace had robbed her of her position as concubine. Qin Jingshu said, but mother, whether she is aunt or the concubine in the palace, is very good to us. Mrs. Xiangguo interrupted her daughter sternly, shut up. With such a low status, if she hadn't been favored by the Holy Emperor, she wouldn't be qualified to take care of us. My father is a veteran cabinet minister, my mother comes from a wealthy family, and my grandfather deserves to enjoy the ancestral temple. If it weren't for fate, I am a queen, so why should I beg for mercy? Qin Jingshu opened her eyes wide and looked at her mother in disbelief. After Mrs. Xiangguo said these words, she felt relaxed. Since her daughter had a tight mouth, there was no need to worry about her saying these outrageous remarks. Because my mother did not become the queen, you must let me take this path. Qin Jingshu asked. Mrs. Xiangguo said, you are my daughter. Although you are not as smart as me and your beauty is not as good as mine, I will do my best to support you and make your mother respected in the world. If Duke Xiangguo raises you, you will naturally support your father and brother in the future, and your father and brother will in turn help you. Qin Jingshu could no longer hear her mother's words clearly. Her face was covered with tears. She had never realized so clearly at this moment that she was not a person, but just a tool for her mother to make up for her regrets and gain power. Qin Jingshu's stomach was churning, and Qin Jingshu felt a wave of vomiting coming out of her belly. Vomit. Qin Jingshu looked around, trying hard to find a container, but in the end she saw nothing. She staggered up and just opened the door to the room when she bent over and vomited. Vomited all over the floor. At the entrance of the courtyard, Qin Jing, who had just arrived and was blocked by the maid and the mother-in-law, was so anxious that he lost all his usual demeanor when he saw this situation. He pushed away the woman who was blocking her and ran in. Jingshu. Qin Jingshu looked up and could only see her eldest brother's concerned eyes. Mrs. Yenguo, who was in the room, was also very anxious when she saw this change. She stood up in a hurry and walked to the door. When she saw the vomit on the ground and smelled the disgusting sour smell, she scolded, "Who allowed you to do this? Eat these heavy fat things. You also eat so many cakes. Send away the maid I sent to serve you, you are so indulgent." Hearing this, Qin Jing looked up at her mother, and then gently patted her sister's back. Qin Jingshu could no longer hear the scoldings in her ears. At this time, she just wanted to vomit out everything in her stomach. "Are you still feeling uncomfortable? Do you still want to vomit?" Qin Jing asked softly. I don't know how long it took, but Qin Jingshu finally stopped and raised her head, looking at her elder brother with pleading eyes. Qin Jing immediately picked him up. Mrs. Yenguo quickly stopped her. "She is dirty. Don't dirty your clothes. I will ask my mother-in-law to come over." Mrs. Xiangguo's voice gradually dropped, because Qin Jing was looking at her mother with an extremely unfamiliar look. "How can a piece of clothing be more important than my sister?" After Qin Jing finished speaking, she strode out of the main courtyard with her sister in her arms. A trace of panic flashed across Lady Xian's face, and she chased forward a few steps, but accidentally stepped into the filth that Qin Jingshu had vomited. "Oh, it's so dirty, come quickly and clean it up." Hearing Lady Xian's shouting, the maids on the side hurried forward. Lady Xian asked again, "Why is the young master here? Who called him?" Paying respects usually takes place in the morning, and Qin Jing rarely comes to the main courtyard at this time. But Qin Jingshu's maid whispered back, "Madam, on the carriage back to the mansion, I secretly heard the young lady asking him to come to the main courtyard for this trip." Lady Xian slapped the maid in the face with her backhand. "You knew it a long time ago, why did you come to report it now?" The maid was so scared that she knelt on the ground and kowtowed to admit her mistake. "Useless thing. Come, drag her away and sell her," Lady Xian said angrily. Qin Jingshu nestled in Qin Jing's arms, and was carried by him as they walked quickly toward the outer courtyard. On the way, they met Madame Li from the second house. Madame Li saw Qin Jingshu's pale face, and her heart ached. What happened? Why did she become like this? Didn't she just come back from the poetry meeting? Qin Jing shook his head, indicating that he didn't know. Qin Jing's long servant ran in quickly with an old doctor in his 50s on his back. "Doctor, please take a look at my daughter, what happened to my girl?" Madame Li bit her lips hard and almost let it slip. Qin Jing heard this and turned his head to look at Madame Li in surprise. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 290. The pulse is thin, the energy and blood are deficient, and I have been weak from eating less for a long time. Today, I seem to suddenly overeat, and I am angry. That's why I am acting like this in a hurry. The old doctor said slowly, twirling his beard. In fact, he was very puzzled. She was obviously a young lady from the Duke's palace, rich in money and body, so she just ate less when going out to banquets. How could she not have enough to eat at home behind closed doors? Qin Jing couldn't help but look shocked after hearing this. Mrs. Li on the side looked at Qin Jing's almost sunken cheeks and pinched the handkerchief tightly. Mrs. Yan Kuagong changed into a new set of clothes and shoes, and arrived belatedly. The old doctor is already talking about the method of recuperation. The eldest lady is still young, so she is not allowed to take any additional decoctions. It is just that she mainly takes food supplements on weekdays, and she should not worry too much. Mrs. Xiangguo just heard the words and gave the old lady beside her a look. The old lady immediately pulled the old doctor aside and gave her detailed instructions. The old doctor took the thick silver envelope and naturally promised repeatedly that he would not let any news of today's incident leak out. He didn't think much about it, he just knew that unless the young lady had been ill for a long time, none of the ladies would want to spread the word, for fear of being known as a frail and sickly person, which would affect future marriages. Mrs. Xiangguo waved her hand, and all the servants in the room left, leaving only her, Mrs. Li and their 2 children. "You heard it too. The doctor said that there is nothing serious about your sister. You have always been calm and courteous. Why are you so arrogant today? You broke into the main courtyard without permission and rushed along the road with your sister in your arms. You attracted so many people's attention. This is also thanks to the fact that you are in your own house. It won't spread," Mrs. Xiangguo complained. After hearing this, Qin Jing did not obey her mother as before for the first time. Instead, she raised her head and asked, "What did my mother say to my sister? What made her angry? She is only 6 years old. What wrong did she do? What happened to make my mother like this?" Of course, Duke Xian would not tell his son and sister-in-law about what was said in the main courtyard. He only looked away and said, "Your sister is too ignorant. She went out once and ate nonsense when no one was watching her. But after a few scoldings, she couldn't bear it." When Mrs. Xiangguo said this, she couldn't help complaining, "Tell me about her." When she participated in the poetry meeting, she didn't know how to socialize with the ladies from the big family. Instead, she followed a country girl all the time. It's really embarrassing. The country girl my mother calls is Uncle Gu's daughter. Uncle Gu has helped me several times. It's too much to say that she is a lifesaver. Besides, when you interact with people, you should not judge their status, but only their character and knowledge. I never knew that my mother was so arrogant, and she only knew that she was a follower of influence. Qin Jing said this very seriously. According to his past style, he shouldn't have said such words, but Qin Jing's appearance today was so scary that he had no choice but to say such words. Mrs. Xiangguo was so angry that her face turned red when her own son said this in front of her sister-in-law. Mrs. Li was not in the mood to have fun. Now she was worried about her daughter. She hurriedly jumped out to smooth things over and said, "Jing, your mother is doing it for Jing's own good. It will be good for her to make more friends with everyone's daughters. It will also be good for her in the future. She is dedicated to her children. You really hurt your mother's heart by saying such things." She then turned to Mrs. Xiangguo and said, Sister-in-law, Jingshu is still young, and she can be playful sometimes. Speak to her slowly, break it up, crush it into pieces, and tell her the truth. She will understand sooner or later. Your hard work. Although Mrs. Xiongguo didn't like her sister-in-law, she didn't want to quarrel with her son. She originally wanted to borrow the donkey from Poxia. But who knew that Qingjing was extremely stubborn? I will tell my grandmother and ask her to educate my sister, so that she will eat something in the future and no longer need to hide. When Mrs. Xiongguo heard this, she couldn't help but feel furious. After being stunned for a moment, Mrs. Li immediately became happy. If the concubine of the Duke's mansion really taught Qin Jingshu, she would not only be able to enhance Jingshu's status, but she would also be able to spend more time with Jingshu. Different from the tense situation in Duke Xian's mansion, at this time, a large table was filled with people in the elegant room of Xianyu building. Not only the old couple of the Gu family are here, Lu Xiru and the Sun family are also here, and even the two sons from Baiyun town are riding a carriage back to the city. Xie Chuan did not expect that so many people would come. This is my new nephew, come here, be careful and keep it. This was the first time shopkeeper Luo met Xie Chuan, but he had asked about it beforehand and was very considerate in the gift he gave. What he gave was a short blade that could cut iron like clay. Nephew, you already have a long spear. This short blade is just a supplement. You can just hold it for fun, shopkeeper Luo said while rubbing his hands. Lu Xiru couldn't help but roll her eyes at him and said angrily, "That's my nephew, but you are so anxious to pretend to be an elder that you just talk nonsense when you open your mouth." Shopkeeper Luo said, "My future nephew is also a nephew." Lu Xiru glared at him again. Gu Mingda patted Xie Chuan and said, "Uncle Luo has good intentions in the future, so just accept it. Your mother and Aunt Lu have a deep relationship, so there is no need to see them outside." Only then did Xie Chuan accept the gift. Sun Jiaxing on the side said with a smile, "Shopkeeper Luo has a wide range of ways. If he can find such a handy weapon, I am far behind. I am afraid I will become an unpleasant person." Sun Jiaxing said this because the gift he gave was a military book. Xie Chuan is obviously not a book lover. Gu Mingda said, "I think this gift is a good one. This kid wants to be a general, so he should study some art of war." Everyone gave gifts to Xie Chuan, even Gu Zhao and Niu Niu gave them things. Gu Zhao gave a sachet. "Brother Xie, I bought the sachet, but I prepared the herbs in it myself. My master said that these herbs can make people clear-headed and clear-eyed. If you are injured, they can also be used in emergencies." Niu gave a handkerchief she embroidered herself, with the word Xie embroidered crookedly in the corner. "Brother Xie, I have just learned needlework, so you can use it for now. When I become more powerful, I will embroider purses, shoes, socks and clothes for you." Niu made a bold statement. Xie Chuan has received a lot of gifts. Gu Yan gave a painting, Shen Changfeng gave a jade pendant, Gu Mingda gave a set of high-quality 4 treasures of the study, Zhang Yuniang made a coat, Gu Laotai made a pair of shoes, and although Gu Laodai was confused, he also carved a wooden sculpture of a general holding a spear for him. "Do you know that today is my birthday?" Xie Chuan couldn't help asking. The tall and strong boy had tears in his eyes, and for the first time he was embarrassed in front of everyone. "Speaking of which, I have never celebrated my birthday, and I rarely receive gifts." Everyone was stunned when they heard this. Gu Mingda only knew that Xie Xingchuan's birthday was in spring, but he didn't expect it to be such a coincidence that it was this day.